Bakari Sellers. Bakari?
Good afternoon. Check to make sure we were afternoon. I am really excited to be here with you guys on this very first convocation. I'm not sure if you all understand the joy that should be in this room, but this is an amazing moment. God has put us all here at this one moment, at this particular time, at this particular place, and this is a moment of celebration. Before I begin, I have to say my thank yous because I'm from the big city of Denmark, South Carolina. That wasn't even a joke, there y'all go. Where we have a whole 3 stoplights and a blinking light. And my mom and dad, they would always say that the 2 most important words in the English language are the words thank you, and they're not nearly said enough. And so before I begin, I have to thank the chairman of this commission for inviting me and having me, the leadership of this great institution, Ms. Pat Dixon, for ushering me in here. My schedule is a lot like herding cats, so thank you. I actually flew into the airport here a moment ago, and I want you to know that there might have been somewhat of a traffic jam. I'm not sure if somebody landed before me. They said there might have been a first, but I also want to thank these 4 gentlemen here. These individuals who graduated 50 years ago, who paved the way for all of you all, and who paved the way for me. I don't even think that they understand that as I stand here today from Denmark, some 2.5 hours away, I stand on their shoulders in everything that I do. So please give them a round of applause. I understand we got the sheriff in the house, of course, a couple of mayors in the house. Did I get that right? Mayor is a very thankless job, so I'll say thank you to you two as well. And to my good friend, Ms. Pat Hennigan, I love you. That's about all I can say about that. She is, I retired, and I say she's one of those good young state legislators. I'm going to treat you all today a lot like Elizabeth Taylor treated all 7 of her husbands. And that means I'm not going to keep you long. But I do think that today is an amazing occasion and an amazing moment in time where we have to talk about life's journey. A lot of times we get caught up in the minutiae of daily tasks, running to the grocery store and coming home, taking care of family members. I may seem a little bit tired in front of you today, and that's because I am. I have not 1 but 2 7-month-olds who do not like to sleep at the same time. So I am running on fumes, but I'm happy to be here. We always get caught up in what we have to do that many times we forget to look at life's journey. And so the purposes of today's discussion, we're going to take a journey. And I always tell people that with every journey that you take, even those that are about to embark on a new journey, you have to have a destination. And so for the purposes of today's journey, we will have the destination of excellence. We're taking a journey to excellence. I found out that's the best way for me to live my life, to set this culture of expectation, because right now we live in a culture of low expectation, and even worse than that, oftentimes you get what you expect. And so whether or not you are 50, 60, 70 years old, whether or not you're 5, 10, 15, 20, whether or not you've been in school for a little while or restarting school, today we are rededicating ourselves and starting this journey to excellence. But in order to navigate this journey to excellence, you have to ask yourself 2 very simple questions. And Mr. President, I'm going to apologize beforehand for bombarding you with questions that are rooted in such simplicity, but they're necessary to answer as we navigate this journey to excellence. The first is, how far have we come? It's a good question for you 4 gentlemen. And the next is, where do we go from here? How far have we come, and where do we go from here? See, these 2 questions are the bedrock of our communities. They help determine our trajectory. They help guide our journey. And so for the first question of how far have we come, I like to use some historical context. For me, I always like to give historical context of what I know best, which is South Carolina. I like to think back to 1946, and there was a young African-American male. His name was George Elmore. And George was unique because he was so fair-skinned that he could pass for being white. But George was what they called a Renaissance man back in the day. You see, in 1946, George owned a 5 and dime store, 2 liquor stores, took pictures, and drove a cab on the side. And George was filled with pride, and he had the audacity to go down to the Richland County Election Commission and try to register to vote. But when he got there, because he was so fair-skinned, they said, okay, we'll give you this voter registration card. And George said he was going to go vote in the first election he could find that August. But when he got there, the poll workers laughed at him. They said, George, we know you're a Negro. You can't vote here. But George was filled with pride. So George walked away from that voting booth, and George filed this lawsuit, which was known as Elmore versus Rice. As soon as he filed the lawsuit, people stopped distributing to his 5 and dime store. His liquor store was firebombed. His wife literally died in a mental health facility from having to undergo so much trauma. The cross was being burned on her yard. George Elmore lost everything. He died a very broken man financially, emotionally, and mentally. But you see, Elmore versus Rice is the reason that African Americans can vote in primaries throughout the South. So ask yourself that very simple question: how far have we come? I like to think back to 1949 and the parents of children in Clarendon County, South Carolina. Many people don't even know the history we have that's right here in our state, within a stone's throw away from where we are. You know, those parents, they wanted kids to have the opportunity to ride school buses. And so they filed a lawsuit against the school superintendent at the time. Now, don't go get any ideas. I don't want any local school board members calling me saying they're about to file a lawsuit against me because of something you said over there in Northeastern. But they filed a lawsuit against the school superintendent. And all they wanted was the same opportunity as other kids to ride this school bus. What was unique about this case, though, is that this case, filed in Clarendon County, South Carolina, was the first case filed in the landmark collection of cases known as Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka County. Brown versus the Board of Education started in Clarendon County, South Carolina. The unique thing about that is in 1954-55, Chief Justice Warren got a very rare unanimous opinion in which he held that segregation causes a sense of inferiority by putting children in environments not conducive to learning. Think about that last part. He said we put children in environments not conducive to learning. We put children in environments not conducive to learning. And over 60 some odd years later, ask yourself that very simple question: how far have we come? And then I think about one of the baddest women I know. Her name was Sarah Mae Fleming. You see, Sarah Mae Fleming, she was a 22-year-old domestic worker in Columbia, South Carolina. This story may sound familiar. She was tired when she got off work, and she came down, and this is back, some of these people may remember, may be able to tell you, who are a little bit older than I, but back when the public transportation and the buses were owned by the utility companies. So SCE&G used to own the buses in Columbia, and she was tired, and so she sat down in the first open seat she could find in the front of the bus. But see, that wasn't her sin. Her sin was that when the bus driver told her to leave, she didn't go out the back door. She went out the front door, and the bus driver punched her in the stomach and rolled her down the steps. And you know, I'm not a pastor, Sheriff. I'm the furthest thing from it, but I do like in the book of Isaiah, when he was in the full awe and glory of the Lord, and the question was asked, who shall go for me? And Isaiah said, here am I, Lord, send me. You see, one of the purposes of this story is to remember that Sarah Mae Fleming was not looking to make history that day. She was not looking to be a heroine that day. Instead, history chose her. And she said, here am I, send me. Sarah Mae Fleming, she filed a lawsuit with the help of the local NAACP chapter, and she laid the foundation in action and law for another young lady who sat down 17 months later, named Rosa Parks. So again, ask yourself that very simple question: how far have we come? And as you're taking this journey, this convocation journey, and it's not just for you all, it's for your faculty members and your deans and all of these people with all of these nice robes behind me as well to take this journey with us. We have to ask ourselves these questions. It's been so long since George Elmore, but ask yourself that question: how far have we come? When the franchise and the right to vote is usually taken away from us, and there's an entire generation who does not understand its import. So ask yourself that very simple question: how far have we come? When we think about Harry and Eliza Briggs and everything they did so that their children would have access to a quality education, and we still live in communities where kids go to school and their heating and air don't work, where their infrastructure is falling apart, where teachers are overworked and underpaid, ask yourself that very simple question: how far have we come? And when we think about Sarah Mae Fleming, and all she wanted to do was have access to public transportation. And right now we live in communities where people cannot get to and from work or even have affordable housing. And I'm from Denmark, South Carolina, and I dare tell you that we do not even have clean water to drink. There are 100 cities in these United States of America that have a higher lead concentration in their water than Flint, Michigan. So again, ask yourself that very simple question: how far have we come? And Representative Hennigan, I tell you that in my 34 years of great wisdom, I have come to the resolve that the answer to the question, how far have we come, is that we've made progress. But we still have yet a ways to go. As you're taking this journey to excellence, even when you walk across that stage, and I know we got the standing up and sitting down messed up a little bit over here, but we're going to have it worked out by graduation. They will figure it out by graduation. Don't let anyone tell you, even when you walk across that stage, that you've made it. Don't let anyone tell you that you've made it. Understand that we've made progress. But keep challenging yourself to understand that we still have yet a ways to go. And on top of that, always remember that if you are the first, I think these four gentlemen epitomize that more than anybody. If you are the first, make sure, if you don't remember anything else, please God, don't ever be the last. Make sure on this journey to excellence, as you ask yourself that first question of how far have we come, you always try to move forward, but you do that with the hand extending back to help those who should be there with you. So now we have to pivot and ask ourselves the next question, which is, where do we go from here? And I promise you, this is the most difficult question that I deal with every single day. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in his second best piece of writing, it's not his first best, and no, the first best piece of writing was not the I Have a Dream speech. If you think that, we'll fight later. But his best piece of writing was the letter from the Birmingham jail. His second best piece of writing was a very thin book titled, Where Do We Go From Here? He gave us two choices. He said we could either have chaos or we could have community. Chaos or community. It's funny, this morning when I was traveling down, I was in Hampton this morning because I have a farm. I have a hemp farm in Hampton. And I had to go down and survey it. Don't look at me like that. When you say hemp farm, and law enforcement will be ready to pat you down. But I was saying that I had to put my suits together, because usually when I go on TV, I don't have suit pants on. I usually have shorts on or pajama pants. And so I had to find these suit pants because I was putting them together. Because usually when you see me on TV, I'm in a box. When I'm on TV with Anderson Cooper or Chris Cuomo or Don Lemon. And you can't help but to believe that we're on the brink of chaos. I mean, every single day, the crayon under the screen, it could say breaking news, chaos. It would be accurate just to say chaos at 1600 or chaos in Washington, D.C., or chaos, with all due respect, in the General Assembly when they're there. It could literally just say chaos and more chaos. But the challenge for all of us, the challenge for all of you all under the sound of my voice, is to build community. To focus on building community. Let me tell you a story about a young man who was born at 633 Frederick Street in the big city of Denmark, South Carolina. When he was 10 years old, something happened to him that fundamentally changed his life. In 1955, I don't know if you all remember, but there was Jet magazine. And he would always say that the strongest woman he ever knew was Mrs. Till. Mrs. Till, he was deemed to be so strong because in 1955, in a room just like this, she laid out her son in front of the world. Her son was brutally beaten, lynched, thrown into the Mississippi River. In fact, if you Google it today, and I don't mind if people's phones go off while I speak, or you take your phones off. I have stock in Verizon, so take your phone off. If you look at the picture, you'll see that his face was a complete pancake. Every bone in his face was shattered and broken. but she had an open casket because she wanted the world to see what hate would do. And that picture was taken, and put in Jet magazine. Y'all remember Jet magazine? I remember where the pictures were, right? The pictures of the week were right around the beauty of the week. So I always remember where the pictures were. And this young man from Denmark, he took that picture out, he folded it up, and he put it in his wallet, and it helped spur his activism. He joined a local NAACP youth chapter in Denmark, led a few sit-ins, and his parents were actually middle class. And if you think about 1955, 56, 57, 58, being black and middle class is living high on the hog. And so his parents, they feared not only for his safety, but they felt for their own economic safety as well. They said, we got to get you out of here. And so they did something a bit ironic. When he graduated from Voorhees High School, they sent him to Howard University. The irony is that I've never known anyone to want to get their kids out of the movement and sends them to Howard. But while he's at Howard University, he befriends a man named Stokely Carmichael. Stokely graduates from Howard, but then convinced this young man from Denmark to drop out of school. And so he did. He dropped out of school. He dropped out of school and helped found this little organization called SNCC. It was the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. They got paid $8 a week. Their first mission was to go to Miami University of Ohio, where they would train civil rights workers for a freedom summit before they went down to Mississippi. He got a phone call when he was at Miami University of Ohio, and the phone call said that we're missing 3 of your friends. They've gone missing. We can't find them. We need you to lead the search mission for them. So he went down to Philadelphia, Mississippi. Philadelphia is smaller than Chesterfield, is smaller than Cheraw. He went down and he looked during the day, and during the day he had to hide in barns and sheds, and at night he had to look in ditches and trenches. They found these 3 bodies, Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney, behind the home of one of the local sheriff's deputies and ministers in the town. That was this young man from Denmark's first indoctrination into the movement. He ended up becoming national field director for SNCC. And then he became involved in the most deadly civil rights demonstration this country has ever seen. The most deadly civil rights demonstration this country has ever seen. You see, on the night of February 6th, 1968, the students at South Carolina State College, as it was known at the time, decided they were going to protest what the history books called the last vestige of discrimination. It was Jim Crow's final hiding place. It was the All-Star Bowling Alley, and you know where it is, but it sits back in a right angle on Russell Street, right across from the Dario, where they got those real good pineapple milkshakes. It still sits there today, and the students, all they wanted to do was be able to have the opportunity to bowl, and in theory, the protest was supposed to go like this. 3 students were supposed to go in and sit down and get arrested. And they were going to fight this Jim Crow. They were going to fight this injustice in the court of law. But when they went down, they got caught in this right angle, and they began to clap and chant and sing protest hymns, and city police and state troopers began to surround the students. And as the students got louder, the city police and state troopers began to press up against the students, and the students began to press up against the glass, and then the glass broke. And the glass broke, all hell broke loose, and Orangeburg City Police began to beat many of the students, but they beat them not with normal police batons. They beat them with batons that were about this long, and at the end they had these leather rawhide whips. John Stroman, who's still in Orangeburg today, he tells a story about watching 2 state troopers hold one young lady, Emma McCain, who was a freshman at the time, while another one beat her. The students that night, they had to go back to their dormitories, and they had to heal not only their physical wounds, but their mental wounds and emotional wounds as well. Then came February 7th, 1968, and I think the saying, older people say the saying is, tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. But nothing happened that day, and then came that fateful day of February 8th, 1968, when the students at South Carolina State decided they were going to go back down and protest the All-Star Bowling Alley. But this time, when law enforcement came, they got the right idea. They went back to their campus. They went back to their campus. They went back to their campus. And they built this huge bonfire, and you can imagine how February is in the South. How it's not too cold, but it's cool, and how that fire, how it would warm your bones ever so gently, and the embers would illuminate the darkness just that much. But those students could not foresee what would happen next. They did not foresee that South Carolina State troopers would line up along the embankment in front of their beloved campus. They did not foresee that they would have shotguns that were loaded with deadly double-aught buckshots, and they did not foresee that those shotguns would be turned on them with deadly intent. And for 8 seconds, 1001, 1002, 1003, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 shots were fired into the group of students. It killed 3, Henry Smith, Samuel Hammond, and Delano Middleton, and wounded another 28. This young man from Denmark was shot in the shoulder that night. And he went to the infirmary. When he got to the infirmary, they told him there was nothing they could do for him there. He had to go to the hospital. When he got to the hospital, he was pointed out by the only black sheriff's deputy in Orangeburg County at the time, and he was arrested. They knew he was a member of SNCC. They deemed him to be an outside agitator. They arrested him and charged him with 5 felony counts. He was looking at a maximum of 75 years in prison. A little rare piece of South Carolina history, to transport him from the Orangeburg Pink Castle. Some of y'all have relatives who visited the Pink Castle. That's what they used to call the Orangeburg City Jail. To transfer him from the Pink Castle after his bond was denied to CCI, where they housed him on death row because they deemed him to be a threat. They shut I-26 completely down. One of the first and only times in this state's history, I-26 was completely shut down. In between the night of February 8, 1968, and this young man from Denmark's trial, all 8 officers who fired shots into the group of students were tried. All of them were found not guilty. This young man from Denmark went to trial, and the lead investigator said that he had misplaced the evidence due to the time that had lapsed. However, he then made himself the eyewitness and said he remembered this young man from Denmark, not on the night of the 8th, but on the night of the 6th, standing on top of a fire truck, lighting a bitch and saying, "Burn, baby, burn." His indictment was backdated from February 8th to February 6th, and he was charged, tried, and convicted of rioting, becoming the first and only one-man riot in the history of this country. I tell this story all over the world, and I remind people that on that night of justice, it left mothers without their sons. It left the pages of our state's history stained red with blood. But if you look at this young man today from Denmark, and you see that his eyes don't pop like they used to from shedding so many tears, or his shoulders don't stand as upright as they once did from carrying the burdens of so many generations, and you ask him, what's the greatest sacrifice he had to make? He'll tell you the greatest sacrifice he had to make was not going through the criminal justice system and being sentenced and served to a year of hard labor, or it wasn't necessarily his bond being denied and him being housed on death row next to Pee Wee Gaskell. But the greatest sacrifice he had to make was being in jail for the birth of his oldest daughter, or my big sister. Because this young man from Denmark who grew up into a civil rights hero is my father, Cleveland Sellers. And the lessons that I learned from people like Henry Smith and Samuel Hammond and Delano Middleton, the lessons that I learned from people like Majeska Simpkins and Septima Clark and Fannie Lou Hamer and Ella Baker, the lessons that I learned from people like these 4 young men sitting on this stage today is that the answer to the question, where do we go from here, lies fundamentally in the ability for us to do 2 things. One is damn hard, and one we have to rededicate ourselves to doing. The first is what I'm still working on, so if there's any pastor in this room, understand that he ain't done with me yet. But we have to learn how to love our neighbors, even when they don't love us. So as you sit in these chairs on this amazing day where you're beginning this journey, understand that you're going out here with the armor of the Lord, right? And he did not say that no weapons would be formed against you. He just simply said, no weapons formed against you shall prosper. So understand that you still have to love your neighbors even when they don't love you, because hate is too consuming. The second thing that we have to do, and I don't really care if you're 88 or 8, you have to learn how to dream with your eyes open. There is nothing in this world that we could not do. You have to learn how to dream with your eyes open. If I were to tell you that a young black kid from Denmark, South Carolina, who grew up in the South Carolina public school system, who was the son of a civil rights hero, would one day become a legislator, y'all would think we were crazy. But dreaming with your eyes open means absolutely anything is possible. Now you guys are on this journey to excellence, and you're going to ask yourself these questions of how far have we come and where do we go from here? And one day you're going to get to that ultimate goal, which is excellence, but let me define it for you before I take my seat. With all due respect to the president of this great institution, the greatest educator of all time is Benjamin Elijah Mays. You can be number 2. And And Benjamin Mays once said, in all things that you do them so well that no man living, dead, or yet to be born can do them better. That is what excellence means. That is our goal on this journey. Now, when you get to the finish line, you may not be rich, and you may not be famous, and your name may not be in lights, but I promise you that all of those individuals, like these 4 people on this stage who walked before you, will simply be able to look at all of you all and say, job well done. Thank you, and God bless you all.